4 years ago, Dr Ahmadreza Djalali, an academic expert based in Sweden, was invited to attend a conference in Iran to share his work on disaster medicine. On the 25th of April 2016, he was abducted by Iranian Revolutionary Guards at Tehran airport. Ahmadreza was illegally held for 7 months in solitary confinement without access to a lawyer. He has been tortured both physically and mentally, suffered interrogation, and been held for long periods of time in solitary confinement. Dr Jalali has been denied urgently needed medical treatment and contact with his family. His trial was unlawful, with no access to a lawyer. He was sentenced to the death penalty in February 2017 and has lived under its shadow ever since. Dr Jalali is an innocent dual national academic caught up as a bargaining chip facing the possibility of execution every day in an Iranian prison.
I'm Valerie Piet. I'm the director of the International Observatory of Human Rights. Advocacy groups around the world have supported Dr Ahmadreza Djalali to try and secure his release. Prominent among them is the Scholars at Risk Network. We're joined by their founding executive director, Robert Quinn, to talk about their work to secure Ahmadreza's freedom. Robert, many thanks for joining us. How does the Scholars at Risk Network support academics like Dr Djalali around the world?
Scholars at Risk is an international network of higher education institutions, associations, academics, staff, students, and others who believe in the importance of a free space for inquiry, for teaching, for sharing ideas, who believe in the university. And we were formed to help protect the university spaces when they come under pressure or attack from the outside. Our core work is to help individual scholars when they come under unjust pressures and to advocate for their well-being, especially for those who are imprisoned or facing prosecution on charges that we don't believe have merit. And Dr. Jalali's case is one of those cases where we have an esteemed, internationally recognized scholar who has been put up on and convicted of charges without any evidentiary basis and has been languishing in very difficult conditions in prison.
The 25th of April marks the 4th anniversary of the abduction and subsequent imprisonment of Ahmadreza in Iran. He's been on hunger strikes 3 times and is currently held in a small cell in the notorious Evian prison. He shares it with at least a dozen other inmates when we've got coronavirus running rife there. Scholars at Risk have recently written an open letter calling for his release. Can you describe the response to that letter?
We are issuing a call for humanitarian, compassionate release of Dr. Jalali, held in prison in Iran for over 4 years now, facing a death sentence. Dr. Jalali's health is not good. The Iranian regime, we know, has released a number of individuals based on compassionate and humanitarian grounds, especially at this time of the COVID crisis. And we would urge the authorities to add Dr. Jalali to those being released. In the public and international higher education sector, the response has been very positive. We have seen a number of the actors within our networks pick up and send similar letters, including the German Rectors Conference, which represents most, if not all, of the universities across Germany, all of whom have very important ties with Iranian higher education and could be very strong partners for Iranian higher education if it weren't for situations such as Dr. Jalali, as well as the SAR Sweden section, which represents most of the universities in Sweden, where Dr. Jalali, of course, is based and where he did graduate work and has residence. So the challenge is we haven't yet seen state response, and we really need help to encourage generally positive acting states who have relationships with the Iranian government to try to engage on behalf of Dr. Jalali. And we hope that the Iranian government itself will recognize that now especially is a moment where a compassionate or humanitarian release in his case would be appropriate.
Dr. Jalali's request for temporary furlough during this pandemic was rejected. He's a scholar of disaster medicine, and yet he's still in jail at a time when Iran is suffering an outbreak of COVID-19. It seems so counterproductive.
This case in particular, at this moment in time, really shows the self-destructive results of imprisoning scholars who are merely doing their work and sharing their expertise and their ideas. The only reason Dr. Jalali was in Iran was to share his expertise on disaster medicine with colleagues in Iran, not specifically about COVID, of course, because it was years ago, but his expertise and his knowledge, when it's passed on to colleagues in the country, can, of course, help to prepare for exactly this kind of situation. So on the positive side, the Iranian regime, it has a regular history of compassionate release of individuals, particularly around the Nowruz holidays, but also recently they have released some reports between 85,000 and 100,000 detainees, precisely because of the COVID situation and the vulnerability in close quarters of detention. So we would be hopeful that this combination, both to recognize that Dr. Jalali and his expertise could be helpful if he could get out and teach, and he supports the Iranian people, but also recognizing that now is a moment for compassionate humanitarian release. And I think that would send a very positive message to the higher education community, especially the disaster medicine community at this time.
Robert, what actions can academic institutions take to protect their staff?
Well, I think the most important thing for the higher education sector and for any one institution or any one school or department or program to do is to talk about the importance of academic freedom, free inquiry, and recognize that the security of their staff and scholars when they engage in their work has to be foremost in their mind. And that's why detentions of scholars such as this can be so destructive, not only to the international community, but to the home community as well. Because if scholars and schools have to think twice before their researchers go to a place to help, to share their expertise, to train, to teach, and so forth, it really shuts down the whole exercise of sharing knowledge across borders.
There was some discussion a few years ago that the VUB University in Belgium may not take Iranian students while the Iranian authorities are abducting academics. What other avenues do you think are available?
VUB is a long-standing member of our network, and we're very happy to work with them, and we're very proud and gratified by their efforts on behalf of their staff member to try to secure his release. I think talking about the obvious implications for productive cooperation when scholars are arbitrarily detained is very important. So it's perfectly understandable that when a staff member is arbitrarily detained and tried and convicted and held for years, that the home institution should, of course, be reassessing the viability of partnerships with the state that is responsible. That being said, at Scholars at Risk, we of course strongly prefer engagement. Our program is one that is trying to and is building a global network to help reinforce the concept of independent, free, safe, secure higher education institutions. So I don't have an official position on whether boycotting students from Iran would be a good program. It would be very, very unfortunate, and we of course would much rather see Dr. Jalali's immediate release and then find ways to rebuild the strained ties and bridges that this case has caused.
Do you think that there's other things that the academic community or the UN can do to help Dr. Jalali and others suffering in jail at the moment?
Well, I think that many actors within the UN system, particularly in the human rights system and the special mandates of the UN system, have been trying to raise attention for a number of the detainees, including Dr. Jalali. In fact, I believe they put out a statement in the last week or so, signed by 7 or 8 of the special rapporteurs or mandate holders, which is really an extraordinary statement on behalf of a body of UN-appointed world experts, saying that especially at this moment, this individual is vulnerable and should be released. And of course, calling for the release of all vulnerable detainees who are there for their ideas.
Robert Quinn, many thanks from all of us at IOHR for your work to support Scholars at Risk, and in particular, Ahmadreza Djalali. Thank you.
Thank you for what you're doing.